New Filmmakers Los Angeles in partnership with MovieMaker Magazine. I'm Tim Molloy from MovieMaker, and I'm here with Adi Mishnayot and her film, Image of Victory. Let's start with a clip.
While I'm alone and blue as can be, dream a little dream of me.
הרבה תודה לכם שבאתם. אני כבר
תהיו בריאים,
תודה רבה.
שיהיה לכם רק בריאות, אושר מכם לאימא.
תודה, לקחנו, תודה רבה.
האימא, תודה.
אמא תודה, על הבן.
מה אתה אומר?
להיות בלתי אפשרי.
4 הרוגים על נפילת הפצמ"ר באשכול, זה כבר לא פצועים על
זה כבר גם לא חלון באשכול, זה בשטח כינוס.
כן?
כן.
מי שמה?
רק עכשיו להיות בסיס לעוד אסקלציה.
So, Adi, for people who haven't seen this film, can you provide just a short synopsis of what it's about?
Sure. So Image of Victory happens during the 2014 Gaza war, and it follows my own younger brother, Uri, who was a soldier in mandatory military service at the time, was deployed in the war in Gaza, was wounded and rushed to the hospital. And when my parents and I got to the hospital, so worried and anxious to see him, we realized he had become a national hero overnight. And this is actually about the summer that my brother was a war hero.
I should first ask, how's your brother doing? Because he's injured at the beginning of the film. Is he okay now?
Well, so, a recovery process, of course, is something that is a long process. And so, like, medically speaking, he's actually doing great and has recovered far more than expected. And also, you have to take into account that even though it was a very long process, his injury was actually determined like as a mild injury. Wow. So just so you'll get an understanding of what it means when people on the news say, like, if it's mild or if it's something much worse. So he's recovered very well. Actually, if you would meet him today or see him walking down the street, you probably wouldn't even know that he has had this experience, which is quite also shocking if you think about it.
Yeah, it is. And the recovery that he goes through just in the hospital seems extremely intense and anything but mild. Can you say when you realized you had a movie to make? I mean, you were there just to see your brother, but I guess at some point you must have realized I should be using this footage.
Yeah, so really, I have to tell you, like, first of all, I was kind of more actually working on scripted stuff at the time. And when the war started, my brother was in mandatory military service. In case people don't know that in Israel, military service is mandatory. I think this is key to understanding the film. So this was actually my brother's time. And when the war started, it's like something that you don't want to document any of it. God forbid there would be something to remember, you just try to forget about it. And this is really like a very unique thing that happens when all of a sudden something that is really like on the news and like on the national scale kind of becomes your private experience. And when we got the word and we went to the hospital, this is something, of course, that we dreaded the whole time. And you kind of feel like you're going to go into this, you kind of imagine already the movie in your head of like this excruciating rehabilitation process and like this very heavy burden that you now have to bear. But actually, when we got there, I could not have imagined what was going on in the hospital, and just coming there and seeing like all these celebrities and all these singers and people just constantly coming by it was so overwhelming and so surprising that I just kind of did the thing that I know how to do, which is just pick up the camera and be there with the camera. And I didn't really do anything with the materials for like about a year after, because I think, again, it's something like my brother was going through this rehabilitation process, and you kind of feel as a family like, okay, maybe we should forget this and try to put this behind us.
Yeah.
But like about a year in, when it was the day, I don't know, anniversary of the war, you can say, that all the news outlets were doing all these articles about like the wounded soldiers and about how we won the war. And it just occurred to me like how one-sided this story was. And I just immediately realized that my family's story, or the story of how I experienced it, is just untold. So this was really when I understood that, like, whether I like it or not, there is a documentary that needs to be made.
Yeah, I like how you told the story, because you don't really tell, you just show. And what you show seems to be soft propaganda, basically. Everybody is rallying around the idea that this is a great war effort and we all need to do our part. But it seems like the film's point of view is that it's kind of a futile effort, and maybe all war is a futile effort.
Yeah, it was, this was something that we contemplated a lot about. And as you can imagine, a lot of people told me like, okay, do you want to do a voiceover? Like, do you want to do interviews? What is your perspective? And you should like, and I even got like, some people thought like, okay, maybe it's to settle. Maybe this propaganda could be mistaken in the film to actually feel like also that this is the film's view, even if I don't like come out loud and say it. But luckily, we're working very closely together with Dochen, the wonderful editor of the film. We just kind of found a way to find how we can say everything we want just by the look on people's faces. And I think especially because the main characters of the film are my own brother and parents, I feel like I know what they mean, even if they don't say a thing. So we kind of just use those reactions to let you see how they experience it. And we just want to let you make up your own mind about what you think these people are saying and what it actually means to them. Yeah.
It was funny, your dad really reminded me of my dad. He kind of looks like, my dad kind of looks like your dad, but also like his skepticism of war in general, and is this worth it? He's definitely a pacifist, and I could sort of see your dad as sort of the avatar of the audience in the movie. I liked what you did with his expressions. Did he feel like he was reflected well? Did he like his portrayal?
Thank you, first of all. And it's really, actually, it's so nice like to hear it from someone who's not from the same background, but I actually get that a lot. Like a lot of people come up to me and say like, this reminds me of my dad, this reminds me of my parents, which is, it's a very, like, it was very surprising in a very good way, like to see how many people kind of feel that sense of connection. And I think like, what was really, I think is wonderful about making this film is like, first of all, that my family really kind of let me like have my fun, and it was I think like a mutual, very respectful process in a way that like, they really let me have my freedom in making it. And also I feel like, again, without maybe even saying too much, like, I kind of guarded their privacy in a way while doing it also. So I think like at first they were a bit surprised, and maybe it was a little tough, but.
Does your brother like it?
Yeah, I think he likes it actually. I think, you know what? I think the thing about it most that was meaningful to us is that, and especially to my parents and my brother, is like that he was made like this hero, right? And he was actually kind of like the object of celebration, and everybody were coming to look at him. But I think in a way, this film, like even though it looks at my brother and at my parents, it is actually a film about the people looking at them. So I think also for them, it was kind of a good feeling of like having their story told, like having a story of this experience that takes their point of view. Yeah. So it's kind of, for me, this was something very moving about like the film, that it kind of takes back the narrative and makes it like my family's narrative or the way we see it.
You know, there's a very surreal moment when there's a cameo from an international supermodel, Bar Raffaelli, I hope I'm saying that right, just shows up at one point. Do you need to get permission from her people or something to include her in the movie, or you just recorded it and she was there?
Oh yeah, wow, that's a that's like a trick question. I don't know, but like I didn't. I think like, you know, I don't know, like if she decides to sue me, then maybe, but like I think like the camera wasn't hidden.
Yeah, I mean, it happened in your perspective.
Yeah. Something about that was actually that was a struggle about getting the permission were actually the materials from Gaza, which we were astonished to find that there is actual documentation of the injury itself, which for me was again something more that said like, okay, this film has to be made.
One of the joys of this movie is there are so many surprises and people who show up who you're not expecting to see. There's Israeli politicians, there are military leaders, supermodel Bar Raffaelli pops up at one point, singers. But the thing that struck me the most is you have, frankly, shocking footage of the moment when your brother was wounded. How did that come about? I mean, was that released through the military or something, or how were you able to get that?
Yeah, so definitely that was one of the most shocking informations to find out while we were still in the hospital. I kind of started hearing rumors from my brother's soldiers who came to visit him that they think there might be actual footage of the injury. And for me, like, even though it appears that like a short time frame of the film, I feel like the film wouldn't have been complete without it. Because I think the footage in Gaza really lets you into like to actually understand what my brother was going through and what this war that all these celebrities that come there and celebrate and Bar Raffaelli, they're cheering for something that we don't see the whole time in the hospital. It's just like pops up from the TV screens. But when you actually see the footage, you kind of get this glimpse of what this war actually looks like. And it stays with you. So I knew I had to get it. I had to get my hands on it. In Israel, it's kind of different than how you would expect, like if you had to get this out of the US military, I guess, because military service in Israel is mandatory. So everything is much more, I don't know really how to explain it, but it's like, it's just young people that are serving together. You kind of know these people. So this is actually a GoPro camera on a helmet that belonged to one of my brother's soldiers. And it's in our day and age, I think like the Israeli army, they realize that they just can't stop soldiers from bringing their own GoPro, bringing their own like digital devices. So they don't really fight it anymore. Like this particular soldier who's just like a wonderful, like he has such a cinematic eye, and he actually like he recorded a lot of his service during the army. And the IDF at some point were just like, okay, we can't stop him. So they send him to this like crash course of like being a battalion, like documenter or something. And I went to see him and I got his consent like to use the footage. But then I had to take it up to the censorship office. There is in Israel, there is like a censorship office for military materials that you have to get approval to use to make sure that it doesn't have like a security risk for the country or whatever. So I was very, very nervous about that. But we submitted it, and actually like the war already was like hyper shown in other TV outlets. So that particular material, like they didn't have as much of a problem with, and we finally got the approval.
Did you serve in the military yourself?
Yeah, I did serve in the military. But first of all, it's very different when you're a woman unless you volunteer to go into combat. Mm-hmm. And me personally, I served as this is a term which actually sounds terrible when you say it like that, but it's like a soldier teacher. Mm-hmm. So I was actually like put in high schools for dropouts and just to prepare them for their math exams and stuff like that. And it's, of course, again, it also serves like a role model for people from other privileged areas so that they would aspire to go to the army, because I was there with the uniform inside the schools. But basically, like, I actually am an outsider to that world. I think both to like the very masculine kind of gung-ho environment of the service, and also because I didn't really have like an army service like that. I didn't meet combat soldiers during my service or anything like that.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for other filmmakers?
In general?
Yeah. Like anything you wish someone had told you when you were starting this journey?
I think one of the key things in here, like especially with this film, that both it was based like on a private experience, and it took me a very long time to make it. A lot of it just for like processes that I have to do to like mentally be ready to put this out there, and a lot of stuff like that. And I think, so first of all, like my advice is like, you know, if at one point you decide to make the film, just make the film. Like you're not sure if it's gonna come out okay or not, and you don't know what you're doing, whatever, just make the film. And you have to find people that kind of see what you see. Like, for example, like my film editor, before I met him, I met with many editors until I found the one that he just watched. Like I had, you know, because I had hours and hours of material, and I kind of summed it up to something that was more watchable. And I just looked for that person who, when he saw it, he says like, okay, this is the film, I get it, no? So I think like this is so crucial. You have to find people that kind of are able to see where you want to go.
What do you hope people take away from seeing your film? I mean, I definitely got my interpretation of it, and I feel like I got your intent, but what do you hope people get?
It's a little bit different, I think, between people like inside Israel and outside Israel. And this is really interesting for me. This is why I'm very grateful actually for this kind of like world festival circuit that it's going through right now, because it was like primarily it was first like a very local kind of film, and I really want to let people have this mirror and kind of look at the way that I think like Israeli society is very unique in its ability to come together and to unify behind like shared purposes. And I think there's something so beautiful in that, and there are so many good intentions in that. But when you see it in the context of war, and you think like, you know, everybody's kind of like rooting for some good change to come, for us to win the war, for this to be better. But in the same time, you can see already during that round of violence that it's just a round of violence. Everybody is already acknowledging it, that this doesn't begin anything, it doesn't end anything, it's just gonna go on like this. So first of all, it was for me like a way to put a mirror into people and tell them like, wait, maybe use all this energy and think if something could actually be changed.
I think that goes to your title. Can you explain your title?
Sure. So image of victory in Hebrew, it's תמונת ניצחון. It's actually a phrase that was commonly used in the news reports, and it's become like, it was coined, like it's become a very common phrase to use in general about like achieving the image of victory. And this was something particularly in the 2014 war, that they were constantly going from like a ceasefire to a continuation of the clashes. And they were talking about how both sides are trying to achieve an image of victory before they do like the ceasefire. So they could say like, we won. So this is actually where it came from. So it's in Israel, it's like a very common phrase. But so for me, it was like, is this our image of victory? Like this is what it looks like. Like this is what our victory looks like. And also I think just the word image in its, like in the context that you see, it's the image of.
It's a great title. It really summarizes everything I think you're doing perfectly. Adi, it's such an honor to talk with you about this movie. Just thank you so much and congratulations.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to talk with you.